Okay. Hello, this is Josie Long, and welcome to Robin Ince's and Josie's Book Shambles, episode 51. I'm going to put it out there. And we're thrilled to be back and to have you back. And today we have the wonderful special guest that is Reece Shearsmith.
Hello.
Should we say the actor, writer and broadcaster?
Sorry.
Always a broadcaster. Everyone's a broadcaster.
Everyone's a broadcaster.
We'll start exactly what we were talking about before the mics were turned on, which was, I was mentioning Harlan Ellison, who is one of those writers who written an enormous number of short stories, of non-fiction, a great collection of TV reviews called The Glass Teat, and from the 1970s. He is and he wrote City on the Edge of Forever, which is the episode of Star Trek with Joan Collins, where Spock has to wear a little woolen hat to cover up his pointy ears. And we just got on to, we were mentioning Outer Limits, because I have a book of his short stories called Shatterday, and you went, that sounds like Outer Limits. Now, he wrote The Demon with the Glass Hand.
Oh, right, yes.
And the episode with Charles Bronson, which is about a kind of future soldier war thing. I think that's what it is.
Oh, right,
that Terminator rips off just enough for him to be able to sue James Cameron.
Right. And did he win?
I think he did, because the problem was James Cameron kept saying, apparently in interviews, and I kind of wanted it to be a little bit like an Outer Limits episode. And someone eventually went, that thing he wants to be like I think it is very like an Outer Limits episode.
Yeah, right. Oh, I see, yeah. No, Shatterday, that rings a bell. It reminds me of it was an anthology series. It could have been Tales from the Dark Side. And it was about a man that rings himself up and he's at his own house. And he accidentally rings his house, but then he picks up.
That's like him. There's a Roger Moore film. What's
the
it
man
called?
who haunts
himself.
Yeah, a little bit like that. A little bit like that bit in the David Lynch, where he says, "I'm at your house now." That was horrible.
Yeah, the Lost Highway.
Lost Highway, yeah. But it's a whole thing about his kind of doppelganger thing. And I think it was called Shatterday. But that's by coincidence, anyway.
So we have to start, obviously, the last time that we were together was showing a double bill of Dead of Night, the fantastic Ealing horror film, and then Deathline, or Raw Meat for our American listeners, which both of us were just saying. Now, the thing about when you hadn't seen it on the big screen before either, had you?
No. So, and we were both amazed at how extraordinarily transformed it was into a horror film. You know, it became really, all the jump scares in it, particularly the bits on the underground, were so powerful. I mean, it was like a different film. I remember it being quite kind of too comedic to be taken seriously for quite a long time into it. I mean, obviously Donald Pleasance is brilliant in it, but it was really properly scary. Something of the Texas Chainsaw feel about it. It was genuinely quite horrible, wasn't it?
Well, also, because everyone remembers it for the mind the doors, because it's the only thing that he can say. And it is mind the doors, not mind the gap, right? Don't pick me up on this. And so you remember it as a funny, old, lonely cannibal.
Yeah.
And you watch it again and you go, this is one of the saddest. Didn't you say, was it Ramsey Campbell?
Yeah, Ramsey Campbell said that the actor that gave that performance as the man, as he's called in the credits, it's one of the most haunting in theatre, in cinema, because you genuinely feel sorry for him, the plight of this man with his wife down there in the sewers, whatever, and you genuinely feel that utter pathos for his predicament, and sorry for him every time anyone bashes him on the head with a stick or a rock, which is what they seem to do every 5 minutes to him.
Yeah, he's got this big scars, and they're all ill and covered in sores, and that long tracking shot.
Yeah, you do feel his pain, don't you? Like, you just give him some antibiotics, he'll be all right in 10 days.
Now, I wanted to, obviously, we're going to talk about horror on this one because at least two of us here, possibly you as well, Josie, it's a genre that we embraced when we were quite young.
Oh, absolutely.
Probably too young.
Yes, absolutely.
Go on.
This is slightly derailing. I bought you, when I was in Portland, some horror comics for this one, and I fucking left them at home. But
which ones are they?
Well,
I love them.
They were sort of from tales of sort of mystery, and there was one, and on the front of it, it's got a skeleton opening an elevator, and there's people saying, "But there isn't a 13th floor," and he's like, "How isn't that?" And there's one about the haunted buggy. Anyway, pointless me saying. I'm so frustrated.
When you say the haunted buggy, do you mean you've got me a copy of Herbie Goes Bananas?
Yeah, but I changed bananas to buggy. Anyway, etc. But yeah, I absolutely got into.
Well, I was thinking about something we briefly touched on another one, which is I was at that Doctor Who festival. Where Mark Gatiss were there as well, and we were having a chat, and we were kind of talking about the fact that for the kids that were slightly on the outside, those that were not picked within the first, shall we say, 9 for a team at school.
Yeah.
there's something about horror, there's something about science fiction, something about imaginative fiction, something about the images that are conjured up in, for instance, some of the books you've got here. And I wondered, for your experience, what was it? When did you first go, this? Because the book you've got. In fact, let's just talk the first book.
Well, I've got. You mean Supernatural World?
Actually,
you mean the Alan Frank?
well,
the Alan Frank book of the movie Treasure of Horror Movies. By Alan Frank is the book I think that we all had collectively as kids. It's got some of the greatest stills from across the plectrum of horror films that we were kind of so enamoured of, and Tales from the Crypt, brilliant stills. These were films that I used to get on a very cloudy with a small portable television. I was in Yorkshire and I couldn't get Tyne-Tees except with a very, very dodgy kind of wiggling of the aerial for most of the film, and I would occasionally get Fear on Friday. No one can find me the ident for Fear on Friday. If anyone's out there can discover it, then I would be most grateful, because I very clearly remember an ident for Fear on Friday on Tyne-Tees Anglian region. It's never been shown to me. And there are stills in there of some of the film. Vault of Horror was never on ITV; it was always on Tyne-Tees. It seemed to me. So there was some that was so waiting to finally see. Scars of Dracula was another one, and we were talking about earlier the what was one you said, the one that you should never see actually, but is
Frozen Dead.
Frozen Dead, yeah. There's a still in that looks fantastic, and it's one of the ones that you probably shouldn't see. I don't think I've ever seen it actually, but it was such an exciting world to be to have presented to me in those pictures, and I think that's how I first discovered it. It was books, and then it was eventually sneaking downstairs and watching the double bills, the ones that we only a few weeks ago recreated in the Phoenix.
Oh, so much fun.
Yeah, it was great.
The false promise of these books, because that was the first one I had. I got that when I was 8 years old. There's the Frozen Dead, by the way, if you're wondering. They're dead and they're frozen. They're very much summed up in that image.
Yeah.
That's like Dead Snow. Have you seen that recently?
I've not seen the Nazi zombie movie.
Yes, I've seen it quite recently actually.
It's pretty good.
It was good,
yeah.
Yeah, it was relentless.
Because the false promise in Alan Frank's book is a fantastic image from Vault of Horror, where Michael Craig and Tom Baker and Daniel Massey, they're all skeletal zombies. So when they walk out, spoiler alert, by the way, it turns out they're all dead.
Yeah.
When they walk out of that lift, we see this fantastic image of these kind of decayed
zombies,
and that's not in the film.
It's not in the film. Yeah, they just die at the end of it. They come out the lift and they're told they're in hell and they're dead. And that image of them with their felt puckered eyes is not ever seen. Or it was cut. I wonder if there's ever a version of it that was.
So it was in a trailer.
Out. Well, I'll show you. I'll find it for you.
It's in that
book.
There's
a still.
God, that's
and it was like, wow, what's that film? And then you finally see it. It's not in the film. But that happens sometimes, doesn't it? They've thought that looks really good, even though it's not in our film. But let's put it out there.
See, I was shocked by this image of King Kong, in which King Kong towers above just the whole of the city. He's absolutely enormous. He is 20 times the size of a building. And so when I first saw King Kong on a Friday night, I was like, well, he's quite a big gorilla. He's not this giant gorilla. This is not nearly as good. So do you remember, in terms of these images, these wonder? I mean, how old were you when you got this book, for instance?
I must have been 10.
Ha.
10 or 11. I mean, totally inappropriate, really.
Yeah,
especially now knowing what it's like to be a dad and trying to stop your children seeing images and things. Although I think it's you're on a hiding to nothing as far as trying to keep them away from something that might frighten them later that evening, because it's it's something innocuous as a Teletubby or a strange looking crow that might actually stay with them. Mark Gatiss talks about how he was he saw all these images, but it was a little picture of Jesus with his eyes rolled up to the heavens that was the thing that utterly used to terrify him at night. He saw it in a church.
Seizure.
I don't know if he was having a seizure, but he was certainly just, the classic look of Jesus, but that was what scared him. But I think you can't legislate for what is going to stick with you and frighten you. Mm. And yes, I think there is something of the that you talk about staying indoors and being one of those children that just, I was a very bookish child, and I used to get by making people laugh, I think, a little bit. I've not always been like a comedian or joker, but that was the thing that I think people liked me for, if they got to know me. Because I was very introvert and quite quiet. But the horror and the Edgar Allan Poe and the Sherlock Holmes, it was all just, I used to stay in my room and read. I was one of these kids that the mum comes in. They're all they're knocking on the door and come out, get outside. pull your curtains back and play outside. They're all asking for you. No, I'm all right. And I would stay in and read horror films and read horror books and just kind of shy away from hanging around threshers with a bottle of wine in my hand like all the other kids.
That's my favourite line, by the way, from Marquis Smith's book, Renegade, in which he talks about moving back to where he always lived, and he talks about the great shops there, and he goes, bargain booze. They've got some really good offers sometimes. And it's a wonderful mix where one moment he's talking about Camus and the influence of Camus and wanting to make Dead of Night. This is a lovely thing. Marquis Smith, one of his favourite films is Dead of Night, and he's always meant to get round to writing a screenplay that replicates this wonderful mixture of posh golfers and... So do you remember that moment of when... the certain amount of freedom where you are placed in a social situation beyond school or maybe wherever it was, where you went, I have found others like me? Because obviously, you know, Steve and you and Mark still have a very... You've known each other since you were 18 years old?
Yes, absolutely. God, it is that long, isn't it? I think it was probably secondary school, though there were some kids that I could relate to as far as watching. I mean, it was Video Nasties that we were all watching then, in my friend Robert and my other friend Phil, and we did used to kind of dare each other to watch. First of all, get into one of the shops and hire them out if you were able to do so. Remember that thing of videotapes where you used to hire them, and everything in the world would be on the shelves available, seemingly available, and you'd finally choose and go, "Is it this one?" Yes, and you'd march to the counter and give it to the man, and then it's out. You couldn't get it because it was out, and you had to be returned. There's no indication. Just put a sticker on it. And they would save me the trouble. Or take it off and it's not there for you to be tantalised by. Yes, exactly.
We used to have this woman that came
The Brood,
I
think we got.
She had like a big laundry bags full of pirated VHSs
really?
and you could rent them off her and you could choose them. And my parents were very religious and so I wasn't allowed to choose anything that had any like kissing or sex in, but I was allowed any 18 horror film that I wanted. I just didn't really realise. They were just like, oh, well, that can't be a worry. So I just saw... nothing but pirated horror films between the age of 9 and 12. They would all have a little bit in.
Yeah, of course they do, yeah.
Because that's who deserves to be killed.
That's the sin, that's what you can't do, otherwise you're killed.
Yeah.
See, that links back to what Selena Godden was saying when she was on, which is we were talking about Lenny Bruce.
Yeah.
And of course, Lenny Bruce had that great routine about that he wouldn't want his child to see King of Kings because he doesn't want to teach his son to crucify Jesus. He would rather see, his son see a sex film because the worst weapon there is in that is a pillow. So what was that is going to that the Video Nasties thing, and what was the first? I know we should probably be talking about books, but it doesn't matter because these are books as well. Monster Club by R. Chedwin Hayes.
Absolutely.
That was the first thing that I remember. The first horror film I saw on VHS was around my cousin's house where I saw Scanners, which I didn't think was very scary till I got dropped off and had to walk down the lane. Then I did.
Yes.
But Monster Club was the first one, having gone up to the counter with Mad Max and being told, no, you are 13, and then Monster Club. So I remember, what was the first one that you remember getting home in?
I think it was The Brood. It was one of the, it was one that might have been The Brood, might have been, what's the one with Oliver Reed and the giant snake? And he gets... Is it?
It's not. Oh, hang on. There's Venom, which is not giant snakes, but that's the one that bites him on the penis.
I think it might have been that. I did see The Exorcist far too young as well, which is horrific.
I only saw The Exorcist last year.
Really?
I loved it.
Did you love it? Yeah, it's really horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think maybe it's one of those things that's so culturally embedded. It just became like
I feel I've seen
it off. Yeah. Oh, it was so wonderful. Better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
I thought it was going to be a bit like unsuccessful in what it did.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good, solid, horrible film. It feels evil to me, that film. I don't know
and
what
it's sad.
And it's really sad, yeah, absolutely.
He's such a good priest.
Yeah, it is a sad ending, actually. Yes, I didn't think of that.
See, the third one, I think, has got some brilliant moments in it.
Brilliant.
Absolutely
so
terrifying.
Underrated, yeah. It's kind of the damage is done by the second one, but the third one is great, yeah.
Well, The Brood, I'm sure it's on the internet, had one of the best trailers ever, because I didn't see it till I was probably 18.
It was like with the
footage of people going, ah!
watching it in the cinema, being terrified.
This is The Brood. The Brood.
This is all Brood.
Was that the first time they did that? Because they've done that.
I think it had been done before. It was a William Castle trick in some ways.
Yeah. It feels like one of the earliest times they did it, but they've done it now. Jeremy and Andy Nyman nicked it for Ghost Stories. People's reactions to a thing, but you're not seeing the thing. So all you instantly want to know is what's the thing? I've got to go and see it, and it hooks you in brilliantly. But yeah, I think that was an early horror that I saw. And I think like The Burning, all these ones that are quite horrible.
Oh, see, I love The Burning because I do have 50p HMV sale, 1984, Rick Wakeman's wonderful soundtrack to The Burning,
Right.
which you can hear someone dancing around a miniature version of Stonehenge all the way through. It's one of those soundtracks where you go, I'm not sure this worked for the film.
Yeah.
But it's
What's the plot of The Burning?
It's about Crabsy, right? Crabsy's a kind of creepy caretaker.
There's a great documentary about that.
No,
was
it's a
out
separate
recently.
Cropsy.
Oh, yeah.
That's not the same Cropsy. We're doubling up on our Cropsies here.
Really?
Cropsy gets horribly burnt and then takes his revenge on a camp of people having some sex nearly.
No, the Cropsy Legend documentary is about a similar thing.
It's about a similar thing, but I don't think.
Yeah. And The Legacy was the other one I saw very early on. And these are all these 80s video
With
boxes.
Roger Daltrey.
Roger Daltrey choking on a
Having to have a
chicken,
tracheotomy.
yeah, and then he never even had a chicken sandwich. That's the reveal. He's like, but he didn't have the chicken sandwich. Yeah, tracheotomy, horrible.
What's
Please,
they
can you
just
put
steal
that in
his voice?
inside number 9? I demand
Somehow
that by
they-
the 7th series, one of them ends with just you turn to camera going, but he never had a chicken
We
sandwich.
never had the chicken sandwich. We wouldn't do that. People would get it. But yeah, that was another one, a very early one that I saw. And one of them is because people are being killed one by one. One of them seems to be just that the shower's too hot. Remember that? He burns himself in the shower. Doesn't die, but it gets really hot. That's
Just get out the
start of
shower.
weekend. Well, he does.
Ow! Oh!
Son of a bitch. Yeah, that's what
The
happens.
door's a little bit jammed, but I'm going open with a push.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a catalogue of things I shouldn't have seen, but book-wise, yeah, they were all horror books and they're all ghost stories. And this other one here, I've got the Usborne Guide to the Supernatural World,
Which I
is a
think
book
I
of
haven't
3.
seen that for ages,
Wow,
and I'm
look at
going
it.
straight onto eBay to get that copy. I don't know how much that'll go for
Yeah.
now. That was with the making of Doctor Who. That was one of the books that I most took out of Chorleywood Library.
Yeah.
I love this book.
Great, and it's got little. This is one of my favourite things ever.
Just the graphic design of it.
The
is
inside of the
so-
Borley Rectory, and it has a whole, and they're little drawings. They're like the Usborne Guide. Well, they were. In fact, they had Usborne Guide to Jokes and Tricks, and there was Supernatural, and this one is 3 books in one. And I used to pore over every single detail of it, and it's kind of an encyclopedia of types of ghosts, types of hauntings, famous devils, and there's vampires and werewolves, and there's the mysterious world, which is more psychic stuff, and there's ghosts and hauntings. And yeah, it was another one of my all-time. That's not the one I had from childhood. I've lost that one. That is an eBay one, so you'll be able to get it, Robin.
Oh, I love it's because it's done in exactly the same way that they did how the Greeks used to live. So they did proper history ones that were, and they're going, well, we should deal with werewolves, vampires, ghosts, and hauntings with the same intellectual and educational rigour.
That's right.
Because there's an I Spy book which I can't get hold of, which is an I Spy book of ghosts and hauntings.
Yes, there is.
And you think, well, trucks are reasonably easy.
Yeah.
Ghosts, as we know, even with the best quality equipment, very hard to capture
absolutely,
52 different ghosts in the I Spy book.
Yeah.
I just like the fact that it's exactly like you say. It's told like matter of fact, like
Yeah.
you're learning something from
And
history.
factual, yeah.
But also just know it's so vague as well. So it's a policeman named Yin saved a woman from being hanged by the ghost of a suicide. The spectre became angry and tried to kill Yin instead. They fought until dawn, when the ghost grew weak and turned into a piece of rotten wood. That's that. You've learned
great,
that.
Yes, you've learned that.
It's a
Yeah,
lovely
moving on.
book.
Don't know when it was. Don't know where
it's
it was.
great.
Doesn't matter.
So who were the, in terms of, what a great werewolf. That is a fantastic introducing werewolves.
I used to have a lot
Again,
of-
that is just like, introducing the Roman way of life or introducing werewolves. And that's a really fascinating kind of, it's a werewolf, but it also has a look of the kind of, post-punk, skin era
Yes, it
as
does,
well
yeah.
to it.
I used to have a lot of books that were like 99 worst female serial killers or like 98 supernatural mysteries.
Yeah.
They kind of had to rank everything.
Yeah, I had a lot of books on witchcraft as well. Witchcraft and demonology.
See, I've got those as well. Have you still got your ones?
I've still got my own ones, yeah.
That is the witchcraft, because also there would always be a picture of a middle-aged nude woman doing some kind of incantation,
That's
which
right,
at that
yeah.
point was the hottest thing we'd ever seen.
Yes, yeah.
Did you ever send off for those books that were like telling you how to teleport?
No,
Like-
what are you talking about?
It's like in the
You have
back
to
of a
remember, you're much
magazine.
younger than us, Josie.
So maybe I'm before. I'm after that
Teleport
stuff.
technology was
good.
probably not something that existed for us in the 1970s.
Well, you'd see an advert in the back of a thing, and it would say like, "Have you wanted to read minds? Have you wanted to be able to
Right.
transport your desires to you?" and then you'd send off for this book, and it would be like printed on kind of soft cream card. Like a little pamphlet, really.
Yeah.
And it would tell you these tricks. Like
How
there'd be
to
one
do
where
it.
you have to like imagine them in a bubble, and then they
Right,
would come to you
yeah.
and stuff like that. But I thought you guys would have been
Yeah,
prime
no,
targets.
I
for that.
did send away for it. The Daily Mirror used to, I think it was the Mirror, but it was called Very Special People. And basically it was like the Todd Browning book of freaks is what it was. I mean, people, that used to tour in Freaks, it had the one that was in Freaks, the one that played Tom Thumb. General Tom Thumb, and it had various pictures, and it was kind of like a ghoulish thing to want to look at, but it was all their lives, and Amelia Pastrana or something is her name, the mule-faced woman, and all these, and the Elephant Man, of course, it had him in it as well, and it was like it's a very small pink book full of all these different deformities. Basically, it was quite horrible, like a medical book, but it was wrapped up in the idea of like a P.T. Barnum. These people used to, have overcome such horrors of the world and had been taught, but it felt like it was a pamphlet of the time, not kind of outside of still being kind of wrong, to be looking at them with that kind of ghoulish fascination. But I got it from, I think it was a big deal to wait for it. Remember how long you used to sit and wait for things you'd ordered to come through in the postal service? I remember waiting for horror books, or I got the Creep Show. They did an illustrated book of that. I waited forever for that to come via. It's defunct now, but it was a.
Was it in Lewisham? Because there was
remember.
one place, Quality Comics, which was eventually
Right.
based in Lewisham, and before that.
Right.
And Lewisham was this kind of rather magical place, Lewisham,
The idea
where there
of-
was a secret, a secret warehouse filled with your darkest dreams.
You would wait day after day. I remember it like 2 to 3 weeks. It seemed like endless. The idea of having to wait that long for this thing. Every morning knocking down. It was a reason to live. That's what it felt like. I'll get by these school days by waiting for this book to come. It'll be so brilliant when it finally does.
The Creep Show film is
Yeah.
something that has like never left me.
Really?
The,
It's one of my favourites.
It's
It's a
with
great
the-
anthology.
the guy with all the cockroaches coming out.
Yes,
of his mouth.
yeah.
E.G. Marshall, yeah.
E.G. Marshall, yeah. In some, there's, what's it called? There's something. Oh, God, I can't believe I don't remember the title of the story.
We're all very tired. You've been trying on a lot of wigs tonight.
I
haven't
have
you?
been,
So-
yes. What's it called, that one? There's something, no, not Something to Tide You Over is the Leslie Nielsen and Ted Danson one.
Yeah.
Ah, that
In
one
the
is
sea.
great.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah.
That's the best element of those, is the fact that they take
Oh, it's
these
called They're
beautiful
Creeping
trees.
Up on You.
That's right, yeah.
It's great, isn't it? That film is really good. And the turning into the magazine and those stills from the comics. I so wanted that magazine. Slightly disappointed in the Bernie Wrightson version of it, because he did the cartoons. He was an EC illustrator, but it's not exactly the film stills when they begin and end. I was like slightly annoyed that it wasn't. I made my own and sent it to Multicolour Swap Shop, and it was mentioned, I think,
There's a
by
bit of
Mike
footage
Reed,
we're looking for.
by Mike Reed, and I got a load of stickers back. Yes, it is a bit of footage.
So that, and what was the other one? Fear on Friday.
Fear on
If
Friday,
anyone
the
out there
insert, yeah.
has the ident for Fear on Friday, or and we've
just
had this
put it
lovely
next
comic
to
book
that.
of some disembowelings from Reece Shearsmith.
That's right, yes.
Isn't that a lovely way he's done the entrails? Lovely little kind of pinky red.
Well, it was.
Really
I don't know
lovely
if it
work.
was, or maybe I've misremembered that bit, but it was certainly. I got a load of nice stickers back with, and they'd signed it all like they'd watched it. But I remember sending it off, thinking, "Will I ever see this again?" I put so much time into it, but they did send it back.
That's a lovely idea of Take Heart going, remember, we cannot return your darkest
I remember,
imaginings,
yes, I
but they
know.
will remain with you forever. This book here, The Osborne Guide to Supernatural World, also includes the final book in the series is about special powers, mysterious powers and strange forces. Now, I remember that things like the movie Treasure horror movies, I have a slightly different edition, actually.
Right.
The horrifying image from, is that Satanic?
That's Christopher Lee. I think it's Scars.
Which one is that? Is it Scars of Dracula?
I think
probably
it is. That's the one where he's
it's
in the bushes.
so
isn't it?
horrible.
Yeah.
And that ended up actually that's only on the back page of my version,
right,
yeah.
okay.
And but I remember, I bought all these books and Dennis Gifford, and then I thought, well, Eric von Daniken, he seems like a very wise man, and I would go and see films like they would show the documentary about the Bermuda Triangle,
Right, yeah.
would be part of a double bill with something else that was rubbish. And so by getting into horror movies, even though now the majority of things I do are about science, I got into loads of pseudoscience.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Did that happen to you as well? Did you buy those crappy
Well,
books?
only via The Unexplained, because The Unexplained was, I don't know whether you would know this, but you could buy them. It was a weekly publication that it covered everything, poltergeist behaviour, EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, and UFOs, and Geth, the talking mongoose, and it had all the things of the world that we find unexplained. You built
the
it
talking mongoose. I met the journalist,
No.
the son of the journalist.
Jeff.
I
what
showed
happened?
it because there was a talking mongoose on the Isle of Man.
Isle of Man.
I've definitely heard of.
Jeff, the talking man. I like to call it Geth. I prefer that as a more because it's written GEF. And I always thought it was Geth, and then I heard someone call it Jeff, and I was like, it's not as good, it's not as creepy as Geth. But he was apparently a mongoose. He's in there, I think, in the supernatural world, and he bites. There was one particular bit, or maybe it's not in that one, but he was a talking mongoose, and there's one point where he bit the owner of the house, and then told him in perfect English, in clipped perfect English, to put ointment on the wound. Put some ointment on the wound, it said, through a little crack in the ceiling. And it's on the Isle of Man. It's a very creepy story. It turns out, I think, that it was the daughter and the mother that were making it all up for publicity. I'm not quite sure the ins and
I'm not
outs.
entirely sure. I think the jury's very much still out on whether Geth spoke or not in clipped English.
But he was on, he went on the buses, he spoke to people on the buses. They all knew him as a little celebrity. But it's in this very weird, remote part of the Isle of Man called Cashen Gap, is where Geth lived in this.
And then was that on television?
I don't think it was ever on television. It's crying out to be done as a drama. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I want to do it as a 1 hour or 3 1 hours. Maybe it wouldn't stretch out for that far. But yes.
You get a good 20 minutes out of it.
You get a good 20 minutes, yeah. Get a half an hour.
This is great. I've forgotten how good this was. A lovely picture of Uri Geller.
Uri Geller looking young.
Done in
bloody hell.
very
Very
wide
different.
selection of pencils there.
Yeah.
The beautiful. But that is.
But yeah, so that was all part of the unexplained, and you bought it week by week, like these magazines you can get that are murderers, and you collect them, and you could get, and I think there's about 20 volumes of it, and I've got them all. I collected them religiously, the entire lot.
That's quite funny. They only lasted 20 volumes because that tells the whole story
That's
about
it.
who
It's
wrote it and
all
ran
mystery,
it.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's all quite ropey now, but there's, at the end of each 20 sets, you would get an index that would go on the back of that volume, and then you'd have and you slowly build up your encyclopedia of knowledge, which was great. And so that was why I would probably have gone into slightly more pseudo-scientific elements, because it would have things in, that would stray from horror. But I was more interested in the ghosts and the monsters and the Bigfoot.
Oh, the Bigfoot footage is still, it's
Amazing.
kind of haunting, even though do you know the background story of how they found out that it really was definitely someone in a suit?
Man. Remember the goodies when Graham Garden did it?
Yeah.
So
Arthur
funny.
C. He does it. In fact, Graham Garden's impersonation of Arthur C. Clarke is spot on.
Really?
It's a really good Arthur
That's
C.
really
Clarke
good. When he
impersonation.
does the Bigfoot one part. He goes, that was me. Just the arms flapping backwards and forwards. No, so tell us what, it's definitely a hoax, isn't
Well, what they noticed, they looked at this footage, right? And have you ever seen the Bigfoot footage?
Oh, yeah.
Right, so they were looking at it going,
Through
well,
the
it does
logs.
very much, and there's a lovely bit, I think, in the Arthur C. Clarke Mysterious World book, where they said Chinese scientists confirm that there's no way a man could walk like this. This lovely kind of, why have you had to go to China? Where they very much specialise in the
Bigfoot walks.
wood-based monsters walking
Yeah,
styles.
yeah.
And there's... So the footage, because it's so, but someone noticed that there's actually the eyes reflecting some light. One of the eyes reflects light,
Right.
and our eyes don't actually reflect. It doesn't bounce off the eyes. And so they thought, hang on a minute, that must mean either it's a Bigfoot that has a glass eye or similar, or the man they put in the costume has a glass eye. And eventually they found the bloke who basically was a gorilla costume with an American football helmet underneath to bulk out the head.
Right.
And it was a man with one glass eye.
Wow.
And it was a glass eye.
It was a glass
Wow.
eye. That was the. But
That's
the
how
fact,
they
I don't think
caught
it was
him.
their main bit of research. I think they were working on other things. But every now and again they go, as a relax, let's continue to try and debunk this clearly a man in a costume footage, because we want to get the
Marching along.
best evidence possible.
Yeah.
And I'm sure other people could still say, oh, it was actually a Bigfoot that fashioned a glass eye, and that is typical of modern science poo-pooing our great Sasquatch.
Do you know what I
myths.
used to be really obsessed with and really wish I would encounter? Spontaneous combustion.
Yes, well, that was in the Unexplained as well. That horrible picture of that foot with a bit of tight left on it in a grate. And you think, what's happened there? What is that about? I mean, you don't get it anymore, do you? It's kind of gone out.
You never
It's gone-
get it anymore.
It's gone, yeah. It's like sleepwalking with people with their arms in front of them. You used to get it all the time in the 70s. You don't get it now.
Well, someone linked it to...
Or quicksand deaths. No one dies
Yeah,
in
never any
quicksand
quicksand.
anymore.
I used to read the 14 Times when I was a little kid.
Yes, I still get the odd
Similar
copy of that
stuff.
one.
Oh, I
What's
still
it
get
like?
14
on a
times.
train
It's
journey.
great.
I think I'm going to get 14 times.
Well, it's
nice.
Alan Moore's dear friend, Steve Moore.
Yeah.
was still continues writing for it, and it is a really, because what I like about it, if you get Nexus magazine, you go, this is bonkers, and 14 Times just goes, well, It never says. It just goes, here's some weird shit that happened.
How about this,
It's
guys?
a lot of fun for that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
They had a
absolutely.
great, what was in it? They had a lovely article about Stanley Kubrick and all the myths about the fact that it was him who was behind the moon landing footage.
Oh, yes,
And at
of
no
course.
point does it go, maybe. It just kind of goes, here's the story.
Yeah, this is.
And I love the fact that a vicar reviews the horror movies.
Yeah.
And has his favourite horror movies.
He was great on
that.
telly. What was he on telly
You're not
when I
thinking
was a kid?
the Reverend Lionel Fanthorpe, who's a different vicar.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. I said vicar
He was great
14
on telly,
times. He was. Lionel Fanthorpe.
good
In
as well.
fact, if Frank Skinner ever listens to this, and I'm sure he won't, right? I once did a science fiction kind of event at the British Library, and I had 2 Lionel Fanthorpe books that I'd been given, like the science fiction that he wrote in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s. And I said to Frank Skinner, "Oh, these are brilliant. Have a look at this." And I gave him one, and he went, "Oh, thanks very much. That's really nice of you." So, no! I mean, look, have a look at it.
Yeah, but
what are you
that's-
doing? How can I ask for it back?
Stop
I
being so
can't say.
timid. You should have just said to him
I
quite
know.
clearly.
That's exactly the kind of scenario that I would find myself in. I would not be able to say anything.
Well, you
Well,
guys
you
are
still have the worst
too
story,
square.
a book-based story about why you wrote a story. Well, one of the reasons for the Dead Funny collection, which is a haunting story.
Oh, right, yes.
But what was the reason that you felt there was no way of saying no to Johnny Maines, the co-editor of that?
What did I can't remember now.
You
what did I
didn't
tell
you have? Or was it? Maybe it wasn't you.
No,
Maybe,
it was
do you
me.
know? I think it was Charlie Higson.
Right.
It was. It wasn't you doing an event with. Do you know what? There was a copy of Dawn of the Dead, the novelisation of Dawn of the Dead,
Right.
and it was.
We're all the same. We're all paralysed in fear of a faux pas. Go on.
Well, so Johnny said, I think it was an event with Dario Argento and George A. Romero.
Right.
Ooh, all right.
And Johnny went, "Charlie, please, can you just get this signed?" And Charlie was like, "Oh, hang on, I just feel worried." He went, "Look, it would be wonderful." And so he took it to this event at the BFI, and he got it signed. So a signed copy of the reasonably rare Dawn of the Dead novelisation, signed by Dario Argento and George A. Romero, and he left it in the back of the cab. Oh. That's an agonising one, because that's
Yeah.
why Charlie still, because he knows for people like us, the worth of such. So other people mere to try to, and the fact that the cab driver just went, "Oh, someone's left this old shit back." He probably didn't go.
No.
Oh, this is, I imagine, one of the many collectible books that
Chuck
gets
it.
left in the
And
back of my
someone's
cab.
written in it.
Yeah.
Chucked it.
I want to ask you, is there any modern horror writing or filmed that you really love?
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I still love Stephen King. I know he's quite maligned. Is he? Maybe he isn't.
No,
but I think he still manages to do it. I've not got that new one, that bizarre. He's just written a new book of short stories, which I love. I think I love him. You know, he does it as a kind of 5-finger exercise. I think his short story writing, but he's one of the best at short stories. I think. He writes longer novels, but some of his short stories are great and have really stayed with me ever since Night Shift, which is one of his early collections. You know, he did The Ledge and those ones that were part of. I think they dramatised that in Cat's Eye, didn't they? And Quitter's Ink, the one about not smoking.
Yeah.
Really good little short stories. It's with terrible stings in the tail, and he still tickles me. And I think he's got a way with kind of the mundane that's more horrific. You know, he's always been more interested in the ghost in the radiator rather than in the gothic haunted house. You know, that's a bit more
Small town, small
more
scale.
scary. Yeah, more mundane, more close to home.
There's a very funny thing. I just watched the Goosebumps film. It was like
Yeah.
And it's a kid's film. And also there was me,
And
my
you were really
friend,
scared.
and one 60-year-old man in the cinema. And I was like, this man has come to kill us. Why else would he be here? And so it's R.L. Stein who writes all these like Goosebumps and point horror and stuff. And he talks about Stephen King, and the way they wind him up to admit that he is R.L. Stein because he's in disguise is the other guy starts saying, "Oh, I hate R.L. Stein. Stephen King's much better."
right,
and R.L. Stein turns around and goes, "Steve King!" And the idea that he's known as Steve King in the industry is just hilarious to me.
That is funny. Yeah.
No, I love Stephen. I got kicked out of French because I was reading a Stephen King in Year 7 because my mum was a French teacher, so Year 7 too easy.
Yeah.
Year 12 too hard.
Did you ever do that thing where, when you'd have to read a little bit from the book that you'd reviewed at school?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I did, my book review was about The Spear by James Herbert when I was 11.
God.
And so I read the bit where there's someone who's stuck on the door. They've been basically impaled and they're hanging from a door and the blood's gurgling through their throat, but the feet don't touch the ground. And eventually Mr. Clifton went, "You can stop reading now." And I was in a bit of trouble for that. Did you ever have any trouble for...
Well, I remember venting all of my obsessions from when I was about 13 into a class presentation. You had to do something. And because I just wanted to do a bit of everything, I had like the decapitation from the Omen, the bit where she gets Omen 2 when she gets under the eye, when he goes under the ice, and then the pecking of the eyes out in Omen 2 as well. And then, but then I had, as well as that, I had a bit of the Young Frankenstein, a bit from them putting on the Ritz. So it was a weird mix. There was no coherence to it other than these are all the things I love at the moment. Please watch them. I'm going to make you watch them. But I remember wrapping it up in, and if you listen to how Jerry Goldsmith's music enhances the scene, and we were trying to pretend it was all part and parcel of some kind of reason to do it other than I just wanted to present people with my obsession. It must have been quite a strange, eclectic, odd mix, but it was kind of, I used it as a way of venting my obsessions with 3 particular films of that time.
And how did people react to it?
I think they just thought that's just him. Then I think they knew what I was like by then. But I remember it going on too long. It was like, we have to wrap it up now, please, Reece.
I watched. Did you ever see Omen 4? Where
I did.
he's a
Oh,
teenager?
isn't that
It's with a girl.
Yeah. And then
How can
no,
Omen be a girl?
Is that a TV movie? Omen 4.
Oh, yes, it almost is.
I got it on VHS.
I know you may well be on VHS, but that doesn't stop it being a TV.
The Howling 4 is also a little bit of a letdown, so I wonder if there's a kind of number 4.
Did you ever watch the film series House that was like about a haunted house?
I remember the original film.
William
House.
Catt, was it?
William
Catt,
Catt,
yeah.
yeah,
Them.
absolutely, yeah. Do you want a nice paper
Because
plastic
House
bag to
4
play
was really bad as well.
with? Did it get to 4?
Yeah.
Wow.
House 2 was terrifying. That was really frightening.
I don't
That was
remember that one.
the ghost of a serial killer coming back in the house.
Oh.
So did you ever...
All of my knowledge of horror films is like missing the golden era of like
Yeah,
the
no,
60s and 70s and
House
just
2.
shit from the early 90s from America.
Well, it's basically once the non-stop sequels began, isn't it? That
Yeah,
was
the franchises.
Amityville 2 is good though.
Oh, that is good.
Oh, it's
horrible.
actually it's more fun to return to than the first one,
Yeah,
which is a
yeah.
little bit po-faced.
It is,
This did really happen, actually.
Yeah,
it really
yeah,
did
yeah.
happen. We
Yeah,
need to take this
yeah.
quite seriously.
Yeah, that's true.
What were your, in terms of reading, when you start? What were the first after books about horror? Do you remember the first authors that you read? Like, where would you start now? For anyone who's got a 10-year-old who's intrigued by reading adult horror.
Yeah. Well, I was Edgar Allan Poe. I remember reading loads of Poe and I found it quite hard work, but very satisfying once I'd got past it. I remember attempting Murder in the Rue Morgue several times, but I kind of got into his way of presenting that melancholia, and I did really enjoy him. And yeah, I think him. And I remember reading Stephen King as well, but I think and the classics. I remember reading Dracula is a great book. I think Frankenstein's a bit dry.
Yeah,
I find.
I think Frankenstein's a harder read.
Yeah,
to go
it
back.
is.
Yeah.
I would say that would be not the one to go with. But Dracula's actually really good. It's not what you think when you read it because no one's ever done the book. Not really, not actually. And it's very surprising the way they present the Count, and it's he's so genial and nice. And then that bit when he finally finds him in his coffin, and he's fat like a slug, full of blood. And he looks different, and he's all bloated, and he's got ruddy cheeks, and it's great. It's very visceral and shocking. So I would say those are the ones that I started out reading. So I thought, well, I've got to read these classics, and Jekyll and Hyde as well. I remember that being a really good book.
Well, that's a great. I mean, in terms of I only read it a few years ago.
Right.
I've never got around to read it, and then when you go, well, this is not the version
Again,
that ever
not-
exists.
yeah.
The whole story is about someone going, why is Jackal hanging around with this awful man?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
basically, it's a reveal at the end, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's not. So in all the, I don't know any film version that doesn't basically just play it going, I'm Dr. Jekyll, I've made a potion.
Yeah.
And that's a great. That in terms of a reveal.
Well, it's good, isn't it? Because you're not with the person, you're observing it, yeah. And that is a slightly different perspective that's never quite been done. I mean, I don't know how you do it now without, you know what's going to happen, don't you? You have to wrap it up somehow and hide it as a reveal. There might be a way of doing it, but I remember being surprised by that. But what about you? Were you always reading?
Well, I read the Pan book. You see, I always started on the Pan books of horror. We were talking about it before, which is
of course, I had all
and
that.
they
And
were
grisly, weren't they, as well? Some of them.
Well, some of them. There's one that I remember, which I think is by Dulcie Gray.
Fontana book.
Fontana
That's
book
really
and the
nasty.
Fontana book of Black Magic, I think,
Right.
was the one where I remember stealing money from my mum's purse to get that. One was 40p, one was 50p, and I think it's like this. Say, I must apologise to Simon Page, who was David Page's brother, by the way. I did steal one of your Doctor Who books every single time I went to your house. I used to be a bit of a pilferer, but I had a difficult time when I was 3 years old, so I blame it on that. Good, that's that out of the way. But I know it's a little bit of I'm Jean Genet. Welcome to my thief's journal. What's he been stealing this time? He's been stealing more Doctor Who books. The not the Brain and Morbius one, because they did that kids version, but as opposed to the kids version. That was right, wasn't it, I think? Or was it Robot? Robot, I think, did a kids version as well as the kids version.
You're looking at me, but you might as well be looking at the wall.
Yeah, and that's how I feel about almost the
No,
whole
it's
of
so
life.
bad.
But the Fontana of the Pan,
Yeah.
and then Edgar Allan Poe, I remember and you're right, I think someone wrote this brilliant thing about Elvis Costello's album Blue, it's a country and western album.
Right.
And it's got Good Year for the Roses on it. I think that's right. And this reviewer said, when I reviewed this for the NME when I was 23 years old, I went, I don't know what Elvis Costello's doing. It's not very good.
Yeah.
And he went, but now I'm 45. I listen to Good Year for the Rose and I go,
Yeah.
I'm now old enough to understand. Yes, this means. And Edgar Allan Poe, when you're young, it's kind of, they are brilliant. I mean, I think they're still properly thrilling.
Yeah.
But also that level of melancholy.
Yes, it's kind of profoundly, it's horribly deep, isn't it? And
Well, he's
Well,
somebody who's
Fall of the
like-
House of Usher is still. And it's that bit where, we were talking in the other thing where we're talking about disappointing, where you find out about the author and you go, that doesn't fit with the human being I thought they were. But Edgar Allan Poe, you go, that's the kind of man who would have written these. And the poetry.
Yeah.
The poet always longing after, a thing that is out of reach or dead.
Yes, yeah.
Whenever I think of Edgar Allan Poe, I think of Will Adamsdale. He's a brilliant performer and writer, and he did a thing about him, and he uncovered this letter where he was, where Edgar Allan Poe was really, really overly defending his not alcoholism.
Really?
Like being, and in there, he's like, my sole beverage is water. It's like, oh yeah, I believe you. I completely believe you.
There's that
So,
great, I think it's in Torture Garden, is it? The only good story, really. I think it's another Amicus compendium film. The Man Who Collected Poe, and it's got Jack Palance, Peter Cushing, and it's Palance is this avid collector of Edgar Allan Poe's works, and he meets Cushing, who has a singular collection of very rare Poes, and he starts to come across these stories that he's never seen before from Edgar Allan Poe. He's like, where did you get all these stories? Where are these from? And it turns out he's got Poe downstairs. He's brought him back to life, and he's still writing. It's a brilliant, chilling idea.
It's a
really good story, and they're brilliant, but feverishly, that kind of mad fan is brilliantly kind of portrayed by Jack Palance, who's brilliant in it. But that's one of the better stories. But Poe was deeply melancholic, and like you said, the poems are great, very moving, some of them. But great stories as well. The Black Cat and Cask of Amontillado, they're really good little pithy stories if you can get through them. Some of them are a bit turgid. I remember finding it hard to get through The Gold Bug.
Yeah, the Gold Bug, I think, was like the first. I got given for Christmas one of those big. Here's everything that's out of copyright, so we can package it cheaply. Here's your Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
I have to. The final book that you brought with you, which is this I love, is because and it might have happened to you as well. Some of the people that we first met in the horror genre, Daniel Farson, who of course was actually someone he ran a pub in Limehouse. He hung around with loads of artists. He was a real bon vivant, hanging around again with Francis Bacon and all of these kind of people. But our first knowledge of him, before we knew of his Limehouse days and some of the incredible artists and human beings he hung around with as he, living next door to Henry Williamson, was the Hamlin Book of Horror.
Yeah.
Which I think was probably my third horror book. I think it was the Horror Moves by Alan Frank, then the Dennis Gifford book, and then with a hand. That was one. Did you ever have things like little props that you might have kept with you, like the hand that you could buy? Which
was absolutely. Yeah, and I had a lot of the Aurora glow in the dark models that you could.
See, I'd love to get hold of those. The Phantom of the Opera, Luminous Face, or
This picture, I remember it straight away.
Yeah.
Brilliant. This is scene number one.
Yeah.
Scene number one of the book Shambles horror film. But I've seen this picture before. But Reece, you've never shown me this book. There's a feeling inside me.
This is funny because being a girl, I would often get given annuals of Bunty, Jackie, but they would always have kind of slightly titillating ghost stories and stuff in, and they were always about sad Victorian child ghosts.
Yeah.
That had died in a mill.
Well, that's one of Emma James's best stories, isn't it? The Lost Hearts, which is both as a story and then also the TV adaptation still works wonderfully. Now, what I find sad is that the Hamlin Book of Horror, which has such great illustrations, and a while ago I was in the Brooklyn Museum, and they had an exhibition of the artwork from 1920s, 1930s, you know, all of the kind of shocking, thrilling, opium den stuff, the Western. And apparently all of that artwork pretty much was destroyed. Artists went, I've done this crap, and it's this crap here of this evil drugs baron, it's this crap here of a vampire, and they just threw it away. So the actual market that's left is apparently just a few hundred of literally hundreds of thousands that existed because they were considered to be worthless, almost insults to what they wanted to be.
I should say this story does not sound exciting. The man in Stoke-on-Trent. That's not going to turn you on.
Well, you don't know what he's done, or what he might do. But yeah, that. I remember that one very clearly. I remember being so drawn into there's a chapter on real horrors, and it has Countess Elizabeth Bathory, and it has Vlad Dracul, and it has Sawney Bean, who I remember being quite obsessed with the idea.
Sawney Bean, yeah.
Yeah, the Scottish cannibal.
Yes.
Only the other day I was writing how I wanted to see Gordon Ramsay's kitchen nightmare set in Sawney Bean's restaurant when he finds out that
fucking blood everywhere.
Yeah, the human meat isn't locally sourced, you bastards. Yeah. But that is and it also has that lovely thing which was then used by Angela Carter in The Bloody Chamber, and then which was of course turned into Company of Wolves, which is that great, and also used in one of our favourites. When I say the hand of the wolf or monster chopped off, I refer to. I'll give you
Dr. Terror's House of Horrors.
Simon Williams. I'll offer you.
Oh, in Blood on Satan's Claw.
It is in Blood on Satan's Claw,
yes,
isn't
it
it?
is. Yeah, of course.
I've seen that.
It's great. It's a cracking movie.
Yeah, it's a really good one.
A geographical guide to horror.
Do you ever find that when you're doing, because you're doing a new series of Inside Number 9 now, and are there points where you and Steve sit down and then suddenly at the end of writing the basic plot out you go, oh, hang on.
This has been...
Yeah, do you find that because you've got such a knowledge of it that sometimes the knowledge is right at the back of the mind?
Yeah, sometimes. I think... Yeah, I mean, we'll think of something and then, you know, hopefully... We don't really worry about thinking... in hindsight, oh, it's like that. I think because we think, well, no one will mind it. But at other times, I think we've thought, oh, that is too close to something and we better not use it because we don't want to be accused of it, even though we've gone through the entire process of thinking we've thought of it for ourselves. So I think, yeah, we don't want to ever appear that we're completely just stealing. I used to get annoyed with people who said of the League of Gentlemen that it was all just nicked. He was like, well, no, it's not purely that. I mean, it is, otherwise it would be... Anybody could do it, you know. But it was definitely thematic, kind of tropes and fond memories of certain things. But it wouldn't just be. It's not just a collage of all our things that we just wanted to act out. I hope. But yeah, I remember getting annoyed that people used to think it was, more than a homage. It's simply stolen.
Because I don't think it's even a homage. It is.
Well, it's not
there
homage,
are things in it,
and it's not parody. We do it to the hilt. You know, in our horror moments, we try to be as properly horrible and horror, you know, and have it work in the manner that you'd want it to. It's never a parody of something, you know, like the Scream, the scary movies or anything like that. You know, we try to do it properly. But of course, there is a lot of nods to things, and you know, some things we have worn them heavily on our sleeve. There's a bit in third series of League where some Mickey's painting something and the pot falls over, and it very much is meant to be like that slide from Don't Look Now with the blood spreading over the picture. It took us ages to do it, but you know, and there's some things we want people to think, oh, they're doing Don't Look Now.
Yeah, that's not the story, is it?
That's
just
not
going, here's a little image that people can go, like, you know, we belong local or whatever.
Yeah.
There might still be some people who don't know Bride of Frankenstein, or that's a reference.
Of course, yeah.
Do you, who would you, we better wind up because you've got probably more weeks to try on as well. You've only written, I was interested when you wrote your story for Dead Funny, you said you've not written before just a prose piece, that everything you've done has either been for television, film or radio.
Yeah. Gosh, that's interesting.
Is there a difference, do you think, when you were writing that compared to when you're writing an episode of Inside Number 9 or when you write a Psycho? What's the difference in the way that you create it?
Yeah, I found it much harder, I think, to flesh out the entire... I just felt like I felt much more trapped in the idea of there's a way of doing this, and I'm not sure that I know it. And I felt like there was rules that I was just perhaps not party to.
But that's so much better, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I guess it's got to be, hasn't it? Because you're doing it fresh and just doing it as you would want to do it, and that is in its own way surprising and better than just being, you know, you don't want the dummy guide and just kind of fit it in. But of the York notes of how to write a short story. So I remember just really trying to think about it was like doing what I normally do with a script, but having to fill in the thought process between. Right, you can do everything much more deftly, I guess, in a script because it's all visual. You're generally trying to not speak as much as possible in a script for telly. Try and do, and you find that you can do it after rehearsing. You think, actually, you don't need any of that. Whole page could go because we've worked out we can do it in a look. But with that story, I was just really trying to concentrate on the eking out of the progression of the madness and how I like it when you've decided quite early on to side with a character and be empathetic with them, but then find by the end that you've gone with them, but they're completely mad. But you've every step of the way, every point and turning point for them has been quite carefully and deftly justified, and you've gone with it. There's that great book, I can't remember, I think is it John Smith or Paul Smith? A Simple Plan, which is a great story and you're with that. The book is brilliant, and the film wasn't very good in the end, I don't think. Where they find this money in the plane in the snow.
Crash. I was just thinking about
it's a great book because he's a monster in it. He kills his brother, and in the film they're making very sympathetic in that moment, like it was an accident. The gun goes off. It's really calculated in the book, but every step of the way he's justifying it, and you're with him right till the end until you realise he's just now killing people on a whim, but he's still managing to somehow justify it. And because you're in his head and in his thoughts, I enjoyed kind of using that time, the extra time in telling that story, which felt different to writing a script and doing it all kind of that. The actor will do that internally, but I've only got the words that he speaks to do it with. So it was hard. I wasn't sure I was successful or very confident in doing it, but I loved doing it. It was very enjoyable.
No, it was great. That's in. And Josie, you have a story in the next volume of Dead Funny as
about
well.
Ghosts.
Don't tell us any more. I know. It's interesting. Actually, we've got to wrap up now anyway. Yeah. But it was that bit about the difference between perhaps film and a book, which is things like Graham Greene's short story, The Fallen Idol, the brilliant film, The Fallen Idol, which I hope you've seen, Ralph Richardson, and it's the story is exactly the kind of reverse. The mechanism that drives it, in terms of it's about a guy who a little boy thinks has killed his wife. The guy's killed his wife, not the little boy's wife, and in his desperate bid to defend this man that he loves, he actually incriminates him all the way through. In the book version, it's quite. He does kill his wife, and it works the other way around. It's a really intriguing thing. So, Fallen Idol. That's my recommendation of short story. That's by Graham Greene. And it's a magnificent film. Reece, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for bringing this absolute delight of the Osborne Guide. I will be finding that before everyone else gets on to this. What's your next thing that you're doing? You're filming a new series of Inside Number 9.
Number 9 soon, yes. So that's completely overtaken my life at the minute. So we begin in a week, and we deliver it by April, and then I don't know when it's on, but hopefully it'll be sometime next year.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Josie Long,
exciting.
You're now having your Satsuma, and that brings us to an end.
Nice little bit of citrus.
Thanks very much, Reece.
Thank you.
Josie. Thank you very much to Trent as well. And we'll be back. I will now thank you very much everyone who's pledged, so it means that we can keep doing these podcasts. And this week, this is who we're going to say thank you to. We will get to you all, I promise.
I feel frustrated because I know there's a lot more horror things that I've read, and my brain is just not
but you know what? We've been
any
in a really
connections.
hot room for about 4 hours now,
I
and
feel
you've been trying wigs on for the whole time as well.
Yeah.
So, Josie, we are going to thank. Who are we going to thank this week?
Well, firstly, I would say that all the episodes of the podcast and reading lists are available at cosmicgenome.com/shambles. And I want to say thank you to Chris Blunt, and thanks to Ellen Martell, who's really nice to me on Twitter. Thank you so much. To Martin Shannon, to Matthew Podger, to Simon Everett, to Helen and Rob, to Zoe Corrin, to the Funny Looking Podcast. Thank you, guys. To Stuart Smith, to Harry Legg,
Katie, Richard Ash, Andrew Evans, Stuart Cavaney, but again, pick the one that I produced, to Squozen.
Amazing.
Squozen or Squozen, that's up there with Geff. Edwina Chan, John Crowther, Simon Gurrier.
Incredible Doctor Who writer.
Oh yeah, of course he is. And James Dalloway and Dominic Surlis. Thank you very much for listening. If we didn't thank you this week or the last week or the week before, we will get round to it. I do promise we can't do everyone all at once. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks.